Come be the man I need.
It's exactly the Pescalera's elbow sore, isn't it?
He doesn't even know he hurt it.
Oh, Seeker Strength are live. Nobody told me we were live.
No, it's not made for kids.
Are we live stream Q&A?
Yeah, same thing we do every day, brother.
Yes. Not a live news show.
No.
Oh?
I would have prepped you beforehand.
I know.
Now you look like an idiot in front of everyone.
Clark says, what a way to start my morning.
Where are you seeing this?
On the comments, Banana Bread is back.
Oh, you have your phone there.
Yeah.
No.
Are the comments pumping up for you? It's coming up on me screen.
Call Will on live chat. This still really annoys me, this frame size. Come be
Yes.
the man I need.
Banana Bread says, my favourite fridge, lads. There's only one fridge around here.
Right, where are we? Live stream chat. Holy goodness.
What's that notification sound?
It's just all of them.
Oh, they have that. It's so strange of you not to have your phone on silent.
I know, I was expecting a call back from several different people.
Oh, yeah.
And none of them are calling me back.
Nobody's ringing you back.
I got no bullets.
Nobody answers the phone these days, Owen.
Nobody answers the phone these days. Who's here?
So Banana Bread's here. Clark Downs is here. I assume a few more of the OGs are here. Lads, as always, it's best to get your questions in as early as possible if you do have questions, because most of the time, by the time we get to the end, we run out of time and don't answer all the questions.
Did you like the stream?
Yes,
Are you on live chat?
I am on all messages.
Did anything happen recently this week in the world of strength, sports? Oh, an Irish swimmer changed to
The enhanced games,
whatever everyone's trying to come in. You know what I don't like? Right. And it's
right?
What's his name? Ben Proud, is it?
No, that's the English guy.
Oh, Irish swimmer. I believe he might have been born Shane Ryan. But I don't know if he was born in America. He was born in America,
Right, you don't like that?
so he's not Irish.
Yeah, well, it's I think a member of the Irish swimming team is how it's.
He's not Irish, Darren.
It's a lot of athletes do that. They'll compete for a different country.
They're not Irish.
No, but I'm saying just outside of the whole thing.
It's wrong.
I don't know,
That's why
is
he
it
didn't-
wrong?
That's why he didn't do it.
What country would you have competed for?
Can't say.
I think you're Irish all the way back, like.
Oh, the tests are there, you know.
I would say,
We could be living in a different country now. Would you surely have moved if I took up an offer to live somewhere else? You'd have to have come over, surely.
I'd come over and visit you.
Bring the Machinator.
Probably have like
Bring Murph.
probably spend a quarter of my time over there.
Imagine how bad for the company that would have been.
Oh, it would have been terrible, yeah.
I assume I'd be in.
You know, the
Sank-
company would just be in disarray. 'Cause I'd be like, no, I'm in the office.
No, you wouldn't be. Like, I'd be in sanctioned jail. I assume I would have tested positive by now.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I would have.
Oh, you would have, because
Probably.
let's just say that country had gotten a medal at the Olympics.
Yeah.
You would have been the sacrificial goat.
I'm glad. If they'd offered to me that 2 years before, I'd be
Yeah.
banned by now. I'd be banned right now.
Do you know what? You could be on your redemption arc by now. Your ban could be over.
I can honestly.
Let's say if it was 2017
Yeah.
or 2015,
Yeah.
your ban would be over.
That's no correct.
Imagine how much you'd hate weightlifting. You'd hate it
Bold of you to assume I don't.
even more.
No. Thomas said he's perfect. Midway through Body Armor, week 1, day 3.
Nice.
We've a ton of programs that we need to add to the app, and Body Armor is one of them. Our new iterations or new programs.
New
and
blocks
Sprint.
of it.
Yeah, and Squad and Sprint is coming out eventually. It's just that we had a lot of other changes to make to the app to make it a better app, you know. We're constantly, for the last 2 and a bit years, 2 years and a month, 2 years
Basically an
basically to this
update
month.
every month or two.
Months, yeah. Absolutely. All that money you give us is basically got back
Yeah.
straight into that app, but it's worth it.
Oh, it's definitely worth it.
Patrick says, howdy.
John says, I have not been paying attention to the enhanced games. Are they supposed to be every 4 years like the Olympics? No.
That's what I thought it
Originally,
was.
that was
That's what
the lie we were sold, I
That's
believe.
what people were saying, like, because they were like, "Oh, we're going to host in Australia," and then they were like, "Maybe it's going to be in the UK," and then I think there was talks in Middle Eastern countries, and now, basically, what happens is they're doing individual events, and these people are basically so far doing training events. There's no actual competition going on. There's nobody actually competing. So what they originally set it out to be would have been much more interesting than what's happening now. Now it's just what I would consider media events for their products.
The problem is, and this is the problem with a lot of things in business that could be cool, is it screams like people need a proof of concept. So to run something like the enhanced games or to run any of these large scale sporting competitions, you need tens of millions of dollars to run a competition like this. And to get something like this done at the scale you want it to be done, so it's like an Olympic Games proxy or something along those lines, you just have to have a massive bulk of cash and have it repeatedly year on year, even outside of your every 4 years or however long you want to run it. You have to be continuously pumping money in. The problem is, to pump money in, usually you need some sort of backers. Now, in this case, I think it's a quite small group of people invested. But even if you have one person invested who constantly needs to see proof of concept, you're going to get this thing where essentially you stutter your way into starting. Where I think if a competition of this size and of this scale and of this kind of monumental a moral step would have to be made, I think you just have to pump the money in and hope for the best. Like, make a massive investment on the front end without knowing how it's going to turn out. And I just don't think I don't think that exists now. I think they're really looking as a proof of concept. They're looking at swimming, they're looking at weightlifting, they're looking at a few other sports as well. And I think it's probably going to kill the enhanced games of these small scale things. But unfortunately, we're certainly not in the position to give 10 million euro for somebody to run a games competition like that. And I think the fact that they're trying to do proof of concept and they're trying to do these smaller scale events will inevitably kill it, because it will never gain that momentum, and it's kind of already taken on this kind of bastardized form.
They definitely seem to have made some interesting choices. I think it might turn out to be a bit of a nothing burger, which, to be honest with you, pretty much everyone was saying.
Yeah.
I don't really know anyone who was actually seriously involved in sports who was like, this is going to be amazing. They're going to do the enhanced games. This is going to wreck. Now, there's definitely other people saying it, but I don't know any serious coaches or anyone.
No.
Everyone. And I know some athletes who were looking at it or who were being spoken to by them who are all like, let's see how it goes. And they weren't saying anything about training for it or even thinking about it because they were like, they wanted to see what would happen. So,
and John, I know you're saying, like, would it be fair to say that it's more of an enhanced league than it would be the enhanced games? It's certainly not that, because they don't have the number of athletes or the number of teams involved that you'd need for something like that. I'd actually argue that would be a much harder thing to run and a more difficult thing to organize. Like, let's say, for example, you've a millionaire in the Middle East somewhere who's willing, or a billionaire who's willing to pump money in and get this thing off the ground. You could get a competition venue. You could select 6 to 10 of the top Olympic sports and run an event once every 4 years. You could do that, but you're going to have to pour money in not knowing what's going to happen. And I just don't think people are willing to do that at the moment. That's what it appears to me, is that they're not willing to take that gamble, and so they have to do these proof of concept events.
But all they're doing at the moment is proving that drugs work, which we know. Like,
yeah.
Putting a swimmer in a pool by himself and giving him loads of drugs without drug testing, he swam faster than the world record. Shocking. Oh my God.
It's crazy, right? Because most people who set a world record will have set that world record in training multiple times before the event ever happens in a lot of sports.
Speed sports, not all the time.
Not all the time with speed sports, but could they do it easier in training? Yes. They're not doing it in training because the risk of injury is so high.
Yes.
You know,
But
would it be a lot easier? Would it have been a lot easier for Bolt to hit the fastest times he ever run if he was running on his own in a track, everything perfectly controlled? I think it would have been far easier or far more consistent. You don't have the risk of a false start. You don't have any of those other risks.
Was it Tyson Gay who did the thing in Japan, or Warren Gatland, with the big massive fan behind him, and he ran the 9.52 or something? I think 9.58 is Bolt's
There's been a few things. There's another one with the shroud in front of them and they're pulling it with a car. So you've zero wind resistance, you know. There's been a few events like that that are like that. That would be considered technological doping then.
Banana Bread says, regarding height and technical model, in 2018 interview, Tarokudi said shorter athletes, maybe hinting Asians are better suited with Chinese model. Isn't this oversimplified? North Koreans seem to be Soviet and dominated. So I suppose the answer to the second part, North Korean technique is definitely pretty Soviet, pretty aggressive. They don't seem to have any really low hip position. They move their feet pretty aggressively up and out. If you look at that clean and jerk from the gentleman in the 88s, that 216 was very Bulgarian-esque, to be honest, in terms of technique. I was literally just watching Bob Takono's 1988 Bulgarian training, and that technique would just fit in snazzy in there. Now, in terms of the height definitely plays a part. Limb length is part of that too. So a lot of the stuff we see at technique is actually pretty... It's finer details. It's like kind of decal. It's like stickers on the engine, on the outside of the car. It's not really the substance of what matters, like what you could appear to be looking at and thinking this is a big change in technique actually has no real difference on the things that are impacting the physics of the barbell, the movement of that lifter. You know, if we're looking at barbell pat, you'll see that the barbell pats all fit that very similar template, that kind of S pat, and then the things like foot movement will affect speed in certain areas and hip height will affect things. But you know, even when we were in the Korean National Training Center in 2023, we were looking at some of their stuff, and the gentleman who'd actually brought us in there, Joseph, which wasn't his real name, but why did he tell us his Korean name? I don't know. But he's a fan of the channel and stuff, and he saw we're in Korea. He was one of the reasons we actually got over there. So I don't know if Joseph's watching this, but if he is, thanks for that.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
But he was actually a biomechanist from one of the Korean national sports universities, and he was looking specifically, his job, even though he wasn't really a weightlifter, was actually looking at the barbell pats of elite lifters, and he was going to international competitions, and he was looking specifically at the barbell pats. And one of the things Darren actually talked about, and we mentioned this before, but they were specifically looking at Chinese and seeing if they should move to that Chinese style technique, which I actually think is a terrible idea. Mainly because the Korean model is very good and they've had great success with it, and I don't think it's the reason. And I don't think they've actually changed to that fashion. And what it looks like as well a bit at the Korean national level a little bit is the fact that a lot of the athletes are a bit more experienced and have had their coaches at home. So you do see this at national teams. We even saw in the Polish National Center when they go to training camp, the head coach there is as much a load management as he is technique. He'll give some finer points, but a lot of times when you get there, technique is pretty well established. And I suppose as well, when you're a successful athlete, in some cases, not all the time, you're probably going to feel a little bit more like you kind of know what you're doing. And I'm not saying any of these athletes feel like that, but they might resent a little bit of intervention because they're kind of like, no, I'm a professional.
Absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, it's a long story short, to answer your question, I would just like to see what Tarokudi was saying. You know, I was listening his video with Dylan a few weeks ago, or a few months ago at this stage, and they were talking about technique, and the thing came up about individualization. And Tarokudi was like, yeah, there is individualization, but statistically, I can confidently say, for example, most people shouldn't be squat jerking, you know, which is kind of how we would talk about things. Is like, okay, maybe there's some individualization for some people, but at the end of the day, I can confidently and say statistically that, you know, you shouldn't be squat jerking.
100%.
You shouldn't be starting with your ass and your calves touching. You know, you should have a better start position, for example. But I don't really have an answer for your question because I don't know what he said, but
yeah,
it kind of is an oversimplification, but he might have had his reasons, so I wouldn't be too concerned.
Rex says...
What's Rex Latin for?
Tyrannosaurus Rex. Anger.
No, king.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you go about maxing on max day? Just keep adding 5 pounds when you start to get close to max, or does that create too much fatigue? Generally speaking, we have a kind of run in. So let's say your max of your back squat, it's going to be 200 kilos. So most of the time you'll always start with, or sorry, all of the time you'll start with an empty barbell, and then you only make jumps that are kind of 40 kilos or 50 kilos at the max. So usually if you're squatting 200 kilos, you would start with 20 kilos, your empty barbell for a few reps. The first jump you will make is 70 kilos on the bar. Now, in some of the templates and stuff, you'll see people starting this off at 50% of 1 rep max. It makes no sense if you've a 200 kilo or 300 kilo back squat to make your first squat you're doing with some weight on 100 kilos or 150 kilos in each case. So to start off 70, your next jump after that, depending on where you're going, let's say you're going to 200 kilos, you would go 70, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200. Most of the time, people think about making around 6 to 8 jumps to get up to a max number if it's on a big lift like a deadlift or on a back squat. Obviously, for heavier weights, you just have to take more jumps. And that's the unfortunate thing. Obviously, you take bigger jumps as well, but you just have to do more squats to get up to that max number. I would say, in terms of adding 5 pounds on, so you're going to hit around 95%. And then your first one that would be super maximal should be 101 or 102% of 1 rep max. Don't hit your old max. So let's say you plan out your warm up, you're going to hit 95% as your last warm up set. And then after 95%, you go to 101, 102, 103%, and then make jumps from there. Generally speaking, around 5% of 1 rep max is a good amount to be jumping for the main strength lifts.
Cian Quinn said, any tips for a GA player in off season? I have a 1 rep squat of 170, bench 135, deadlift 200. Should I focus on sprint work and plyos? Now I'm at 94 at minute. Pre-season, usually January. So the first place I would say, and I could confidently say this statistically with GA players, is lower body mobility is abysmal. It is absolutely brutal. And I would say if I had the time, resources, the inclination, and the ability to do a large scale research study, I would say a lot of their injuries come from lack of hip mobility and ankle mobility. Even if you look at GA players doing strength work, if they're lowering into the squat and if we're getting below parallel, there's a real lack of confidence. There's a real lack of smooth movement. There's a real lack of this ability to sit comfortably in that squat position. So one of the biggest things I would be doing, Cian, and I would say this with a kind of a shotgun approach, and assuming this is the case, is lower body mobility should be on par. A lot of times that ability to internally rotate smoothly or externally rotate or dorsiflexion is really useful when you're trying not to tear your ACL and meniscus multiple times or trying to tear your hamstring. So a lot of times the funny part then is when players get hamstring injuries or whatever and they go somewhere, they might go to Sanctuary or something and they'll look at their hamstring mobility or whatever. A lot of times the hip is probably a bigger issue and then hamstring strength. And typically what you'd see with the assistance work, hamstring will be lying curls or something like that. So really what you need to do is probably get it from a kind of 2-pronged approach, is Nordics and RDL. So really stretch position, and the Nordics will have a big eccentric on that. So if you're hitting those numbers, you're more than sufficiently strong for GA. Now, if you're 94 kilos at the moment, that sounds a little bit heavy, to be honest. Even if you're 6'2" or 3, that's probably a bit too much for GA. If it's hurling, you're probably carrying a bit too much. If it's football, you might get away with that. Maybe 90, 91 kilos. Now isn't really the time necessarily for sprints or plyos just yet. You're still pretty far. So if pre-season isn't until January, probably starting plyos, sprints, something like that towards mid-November. So let's say maybe 6 weeks or so. And then if you're getting to pre-season, hopefully almost certainly it's going to be an absolute metric fuckdown of running on the pitch. So I would say be in reasonable condition by then in terms of being able to tolerate that load, because a lot of times what we see in GA culture is it's straight in, no kissing, just straight into that maximum workload. You'll see huge amounts of volume. You'll see 10, 15 kilometers, maybe a session or more per week, maybe 20 kilometers across the week of running on the pitch, which is a lot of work. And especially if you come into that where you've coaches where they have the view that the lads are out of shape and they haven't been training, so I'm going to run them into the ground, which is absolutely useless. So sprints and plyos, I'm not super concerned about, to be honest, for GAN necessarily. Especially with football, it's a little bit more of a long distance sport. Obviously, there are sharp bouts of sprinting, but if you are that strong and you are well conditioned, you'll have the speed most of the time. Because what often comes down to isn't necessarily your top velocity, it's just maintaining that speed consistently across the whole game. So I would say I'm not overly concerned by your sprint and plyo work. Definitely do some sprints, but what I'd be looking at here is the mobility and making sure you're ready probably for that pitch work. And if you have a good coach and they're minded about incremental loading and load management, which I would say from a betting man probably isn't the case, regardless of where you are. So what I'm concerned about there is, are you ready for preseason and are you ready for the amount of running you're probably going to be doing, or amount of pitch stuff you're going to be doing? It's more of a concern. And plyos and sprints aren't really going to help you. Plyos under a certain scenario will help you a bit tolerate that, but I'm looking at mobility and then strength to a good range of motion, probably better off there, and then being ready for a bit of running is what I'd be thinking.
Yeah, unless you're absolutely terrible at sprinting and that 92 kilos is or 94 is like big, heavy, and you're lumbering around the place. Just getting ready for preseason, making sure you're ready for those running sessions, definitely the best. Marcus says, doing the rugby in season, and after a long break and regaining weight, 6 kilos I lost during the break, weights are feeling super easy after 4 weeks, and wondering if I should redo my 1RMs or just carry on. Just carry on. You don't... The number one thing that stops people progressing in training is having 1RM inputs that are too high and pushing weights that are too heavy. Just keep going.
Yeah.
MT says, has Bodie posted any big lifts after the announcement? Not that I'm aware of.
To be honest, I don't think we've seen any massive snatches from Bodie since he did 182, 185. Does anyone remember that really big snatch he hit? Remember weightlifting how said that? I think he was in the UK. That was a couple of years ago. And if you were a detective and you knew some things about some things and you thought about that and you looked at the timing of certain competitions and when those lifts are done, you might think of some things. But anyway.
Freaky D says, cheers, lads. Collie says, Owen, how do you plan on getting to the 360 kilo total?
Currently, my total is 147 because I haven't been clean and jerking, and that's the best snatch I've done since the comeback. So,
but there's everyone knows it's 160, 200.
I just snatching. I'm in body's in a great place at the moment. The ligament on my knee is perfect. Quad is still a bit inflamed, but it's much better. So, let's say about, when did we go to Romania? 3 or 4 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago?
4.
So since we come back from Romania, I've literally started the process, and you've seen this in our programs, and you've seen this in my training vlogs, where I'm literally back at 90, 100 kilos, where I'm doing 10 sets of 2 or 5 sets of 3 or 6 sets of 3 at 100 kilos, 105 kilos, 110 kilos in the snatch. And I'm just working my way up through them and trusting in the process. Probably going to get injured again at some point, but that's just weightlifting. About a gram of gear, I think, just to start off. Get it nice and light and just see. Yeah.
That's just like health management stuff, isn't it?
I just want a bit of red blood cell count.
Yeah.
Working hard on the technical stuff from Anton. It was going really well until like a week ago, and I lost it, as is the case with weightlifting. So I upped it to 1.5 grams of gear just to kind of compensate. But the technique, there's a couple of things I'm trying to really focus on, and probably one of the best things from seeing Anton was a thing I hadn't kind of noticed, which was he was like, at heavier weights, he's like, obviously you're not afraid of heavy weights, like that's not a problem, I've snatched more. He said you just don't look as confident in what you should be focusing on, which is definitely true, and it had something I hadn't particularly thought about. Even though say I did 147 last year and that was like a 7 kilo jump, I did the 142 or 140, and then obviously I hurt my knee easy peasy. But definitely the problem with heavy weights is just the exact process needs to be fine-tuned. And like the first time you snatch 90, you can be like, okay, my knees and my back, and then I'm at my knee now, and then I can think about my shoulders, and then when I'm at my hip, I can think about extending. But when you get to those heavier weights, it's pretty much a case of it needs to be already there before you do it. And Yeah, so just kind of trying to
That's the
ingrain.
extra gram and a half gear is for that, like, kind of.
Yeah, 2 grams is what we said.
Yeah.
2 grams. Why are you
What do you
taking
mean 2.5 grams?
2.5? You owe me 3 grams. Okay, we've got Dara. How did you manage Game Up Rugby? Poorly.
Very poorly. It was definitely the worst thing that's ever happened in my life, and I dealt with it very poorly. But thankfully, I've literally almost no working memory of those years due to the head injuries.
Yeah.
So,
But you're back coaching.
but I dealt with it incredibly well.
But you're coaching a rugby team at the moment, and they're doing incredibly well. You did their off season. And
Yeah.
And they're the fittest little feckers on the pitch.
They're the fittest little feckers, yeah.
By all accounts.
Yeah.
Banana Bread said it was translation. I like Sergey. I like these.
Yeah.
I like them on the live streams. Sav said he's working but watching. That's great.
Nice.
Collet said at 115, 143, what would be the best accessory standards to make 120, 150 happen? 115.
The funny thing with weightlifting is, right, in terms of accessory standards, you can do 120, 150 with a 60 kilo strict press, a snatch balance that's 120 kilos barely, and some other accessory movements that you look terrible doing them. People can do that if they're incredibly efficient and if they just manage to, by pure chance, be able to pull themselves under those weights. Now, it's a hell of a lot easier to do these if you're squatting north of 200 kilos, if you're strict pressing north of 75 kilos or 80 kilos. And I would say snatch balancing or being able to do a behind the neck power jerk with a snatch width grip and overhead squat, I'd say north of 130 kilos. Like if you're...
I'd like to see 210 on the back squat there.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like.
If you're dominating all those, it just makes it so much easier. Your training sessions are easier. Your recovery is easier. You're more consistent in those max out sessions. Everything is easier.
I'd like to see 210 back squat, 170 to 180 front squat. Good solid 200 kilo deadlift, maybe for a few sets, or like 180 clean deadlifts or clean pull. Maybe not a clean pull, but with the intent to do a clean pull would be nice. Andrew said post shit talk. We need to do another shit talk.
We have one to post, don't we?
No, that was the science one. Science wasn't really shit talk.
Oh, is it going up?
I'm gonna see. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Collie says, what to you would be an impressive Sinclair for someone who started at 18 and works full time? What Sinclair have you guys seen?
I wouldn't worry about Sinclair.
No.
That I haven't thought about Sinclair in a long time. It's not really relevant. Like,
Nobody finishes a weightlifting career, or nobody at 70 years old is going to be like, I'm so glad I did that heavier at a lighter body weight.
well,
You just need to hit bigger numbers.
if you had an all-time Sinclair, then that would be impressive.
Yeah, top 5 in the world in history.
Yeah, if you did like 520 Sinclair.
Yeah.
But numbers, if you ever do 100, 120, you're doing great. If you ever do 120, 150, you're doing really great. Which actually, Colin, you said 115, 140. So you're doing a lot better than pretty much everyone who does weightlifting. So you're off to a pretty good start, to be honest.
Banana Bread says, question regarding gymnastics rings and stabilization. I love that Banana Bread structures his questions like this every single time.
He also hasn't put the banana bread emojis in anymore, and I'm just wondering, is he all right?
No, he has them in here,
I don't see them.
up next to his name.
But did he not put them in the question before?
No, I think it's just Banana Bread and then Banana and Bread.
Oh.
I think that is the username. Thoughts on using gym ring variations, example, ring dips and bar dips, or versus bar dips, to elicit better adaptation for stabilizer muscles, worthwhile, better than earthquake bars. So there's two sides to this. There's two little strings here. The first thing is that to build stabilization, we spoke about this, I think, in the last live stream, about the idea of learning motor, improving motor cognition, learning better motor patterns by doing thousands of reps in slightly different positions each time. It's essentially you're shining a torch around the room and you get an idea for what this dark room in your head looks like. It is certainly true that when we do less stable variations, we bring our body through different ranges and we might get a better idea for what that dark room looks like in our head. Or in an actual sense, what we're doing is we're growing slightly more nerve tissue, and that increased sensory tissue allows our brain to perceive where we are in space. We have better proprioception, all of those things. Now, what is also true at the same time, and what is also directly contradictory to that, is that when we do those unstable or those non-ideal positions, whether it's ring dips, whether it's earthquake bars, we get a level of something called neuromuscular inhibition because that bar or because that ring is unstable. So if I want to press maximally with my tricep here, if I'm pushing against something really stable, if I'm pressing in a Smith machine, I can drive as hard as I possibly want into that barbell, and my brain will allow those neurotransmitters to get there. If it's very unstable, so let's say I'm trying to squat while standing on a Bosu ball, my brain will automatically and subconsciously limit the amount of contraction and limit the amount of force those muscle groups can produce because our brain perceives it as being unstable. So at one side of it, something like a ring dip is going to be really good to build that motor cognition around the shoulders, to increase the level of stability. And that's what we're doing when we're more stable with an overhead press. Because of that, we're doing it because that level of motor pattern or that motor schema has been more well refined. But in terms of building strength, it's probably not the best thing. So let's say, for an example, you're incredibly unstable on a bench press and you've wobbly little arms as you're trying to press it up. Certainly a couple of weeks of that slightly less stable position might be a great thing. Is it going to be the best thing to grow the heaviest press or the heaviest dip that you possibly can? Absolutely not. You need to be doing the standard movements in a more stable position if that's your real priority.
Oh, Hanson with a heavy question. Any thought? Not literally.
Oh, a heavy question.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the psychology of becoming an older athlete? I had a hard time coming to grips with continuously decreasing numbers with cycles and more common injuries from lifting. So you've answered your own question there. You know, you've decreased your number of cycles, which is really is the problem. Like if you really want to combat that aging. So what some athletes will do as they decrease body weight and the loss of strength, they'll compensate by increasing milligrams, and it works quite well. So I'm going to assume the same thing happens as you age. As you get older, just increase the number of milligrams per week. You know, start with just a sprinkle, a light cycle, maybe 750 milligrams.
Okay.
So in terms of psychology dealing with older athletes, I would say I'm going to give you what I would consider the kind of maybe what they call it, blood and sawdust or spit and sawdust, spit and vinegar answer. And you just have to get over it.
Piss
keep
and
training.
vinegar.
Yeah, you can't. You know, this happens in all facets of life. That's not going to be just restricted to training. Like, it's going to happen to a lot of things. So, the way I would think of this is like, you kind of need to get the fuck over it and get on with it. You know, do you want to stop training? The only answer is, are you going to keep training? You're not going to keep training. There's only answers to this here. And if you are going to keep training, you should keep training with the intent that you're going to try and progress and do the best you can. And then if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. You should enjoy the process. Like, there's nothing you can really do here per se instead of just smart training. You need to adjust your training, certainly, but you should still be enjoying the training. You should be enjoying the process. You should be enjoying training sessions. The goal should mean something to you to achieve them. So I would say the answer here, Hanson, is if you're coming to us, if you're coming to me in particular with this, maybe not the sports psychologist over there, but my answer is you need to get the fuck over it and just keep training because there's no other answer. There's nothing else you can do. Or start taking a load of gear. It's just I'm saying. I'm just,
There's two issues here, right?
Gear is the answer. Is it all?
The first issue is that for many people who train a lot and play a sport, have a massive amount of their identity, their personal identity, tied up in this thing of I'm somebody who trains and I'm somebody who's hit these certain physical attributes in my life. The problem with that is you can still be that athlete. You can still be that person from that sport, but you don't need to have your entire personality tied up in your outcomes from that sport. You should never be like, my name is Dara Fitz and I've done X, Y, and Z in that sport. You need to leave go of that. If you want to stay involved in sport, stay involved in training, leave go of those numbers. Firstly, you shouldn't be living your life like that anyway. And that level of personal identity tied up in sport is never healthy. But a major thing with that is just a small little shift in mindset. The second thing is start looking for other wins. Like, there are other wins to be gotten in sports, whether that is through chasing down a slightly different avenue in that sport. Let's say you were doing track and field, you're starting to slow down, your sprint times aren't great. Look at some slightly different area. in track and field and see can you make some strides there. Learning a new skill is another great thing you can do in this case. Let's say you were involved in a contact sport, you can't do the contact sport anymore. You could do something like BJJ or something along those lines. Change the goalpost slightly and give yourself a goal that you're still going to be able to go out and achieve. That's a major, major facet of this. Look, if you look at most professional athletes in the world who are at the top of their game, at the top of their sport, they're somewhere between the ages of 18 and 28. And that's not going to change. No matter how good we get with sports medicine, no matter how advanced we get in all of those things Owen likes talking about, it's still going to be the case where most people who are playing professional sport around the world are in those younger decades of their life. But you can still get a massive amount of enjoyment from sport, from training, by simply having that small shift in perspective. Maybe you did weightlifting for a long time, and now you want to get in better shape for 8 months. Something along those lines. Cian Quinn says...
He was the guy question. He was saying he was coached.
Oh, yeah.
Could you just, read the questions before you sound like a...
David Toulis, I like reading them raw, dog. I never read them before. David Toulis says, I've separated my shoulder at judo this week. Shite. Any thoughts of good goals to chase down during rehab beyond physio whilst my right arm is out of action?
Squats.
Surgeon says 12 weeks before return to sport.
Squatting in assault bike should be...
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. You should be looking at maybe repping your old one at max if judo is completely out of the question by the end of the 12 weeks, or certainly repping 90% really well. And then you should be looking at your max wattage on the assault bike, like your max effort all out on a watt bike or an assault bike. And then you should be looking at most cals in a 5-minute segment. Like, can you accumulate how many cals there? And then you need to look at probably some steady state stuff. So that's what I'd be looking at here is absolutely, and you could do both of these. If you had 4 good sessions a week, you could definitely go to town on these. So rep your squat. 12 weeks is actually the length of the RTA Part 2 squat program on the Seek Strength app. So I'm just throwing that one out there.
How fortuitous.
How fortuitous. Now, there is conditioning programs on the app, and we need to add a bit more, but I'd be looking at max cals in 5 minutes on the bike, work up to that, and then I'd be looking at wattage. So max wattage output on a watt bike or an assault bike would be the 2 main things I'd be looking at here. And I assume you could jimmy rig some kind of safety squat bar, or maybe you have access to a safety squat bar.
Some of the scariest athletes I've ever seen in terms of how physically prepared and physically dominant they are people who've come back from an injury. Because they've just picked 2 or 3 things and absolutely smashed it during that time off. Enrico Marino says, does squat form and speed matter more for progress in the Olympic lifts than just getting a bigger squat, even if the squat doesn't go up, but the form is better?
So you have to think about what you're getting from the squat and why are you even squatting for weightlifting. So you're squatting for muscle mass. One, obviously you want muscle mass. Muscle mass gives you more potential to produce force, and then the more force gives you potential to have more power, more work done over a shorter period of time, over a faster rate. Then you're also looking at training your posture in the bottom of a squat. So if it's a front squat or a back squat, you're trying to replicate some of those positions. You're working on mobility from squatting, so you're also helping some of those positions, strengthen those positions at those end range of motion, which you'll get to a certain extent from squatting. And then you're also looking for this kind of neurological readiness you get from squatting for weightlifting. So yes, speed and form does matter. Form definitely matters. Range of motion, in our opinion, does matter. Can you get away with deviations in these? Yeah. The more experienced you are, the more proficient you are, and even the stronger you are, the more you can get away with this. But it's kind of a good, better, best scenario. The best scenario is the deepest squat with the best form at the heaviest weight at the fastest speed. And then you're looking at compromises in each one of those as the weights get heavier or when it makes sense in your training. But for the average person, is it fine for Keanu Rastami to come into training hall and half squat 280? Yeah, he's probably still going to do 180, 220 off the back of his training, But is it fine for you to do a really shitty squat to just above parallel 170? Absolutely not, under any fashion. It's going to hold you back. Better quality squats make a big difference. So the answer is yes, your lifts can go up despite an increase in your squat, but that'll only last so long. Eventually the squats will need to get moving again. So the answer is yes, it matters, and form definitely does matter.
JV3141 says, doing the RTA week 1, week 2 right now, but I assume you mean week 1, day 2.
Where's
He
Jack
says,
Datsun? You're missing one again, are you?
I'm missing one.
So Jack has high odds would start a new program at a lighter body weight. Should you lower your
Oh,
water
that's
max?
way down for me.
Are you on live chat or tap?
That's 2 or 3 below.
Weird. So Jack is asking, should you lower your 1 rep max or keep them the same way even though you're at a lighter body weight? So when starting a new program, at a lighter body weight, should you lower your maxes or keep them the same?
Yes, you need to lower them. The most important thing when you're running a program is that you have an appropriate maximum number for the weight you could actually do on the day you're starting the program. So even if you set that 1 rep max 3 or 4 months ago, but you've lost 5 or 10 kilos between now and that, even though it's 3 months ago, it's quite recent, you have to have a realistic number in there for 1 rep max. Does that mean that if you're starting a program on Monday, you have to do a max test on the Friday and absolutely max your squat? Absolutely not. But you have to have a realistic estimate for 1 rep max in there. And that is, I would say that's the most important thing when starting a program, is using a realistic and appropriate 1 rep max number for all of your one arms. JV3141 says, doing RTA week 1, day 2 right now. 8. Can you explain why the bench program starts so light? We definitely can. All of our programs start with the assumption that you need to be on-ramped into a training stream and that your work capacity is poor. Now, why do we have this assumption? We're probably on 20,000 more, probably closer to 30,000 athlete program runs at this point. And
more,
almost every athlete we see running a program has poorer work capacity than what we would like them to have when they end their volume block. So because of this, we put in a period of training at the very start of the block with very light weights, with quite significant reps and very achievable session outcomes to make sure that they can actually get onto the training stream, and then we can really start pushing them after that initial 2-3 weeks of training. Why is it so obvious on the bench? It's so obvious on the bench because many people starting the bench program aren't necessarily bench specialists. And so because of that, they mightn't necessarily have the best technique. And just getting that initial 2 or 3 weeks of lighter training in will allow them to get involved with the training program. It won't spit them out immediately within their first month of starting. And more volume at lighter weights is so, so valuable. It's a thing of patience for most people. They're very impatient, so you want to immediately get into those hard, difficult sessions. But those lighter, more voluminous sessions are really where most of the impact really comes from those programs.
Yeah, bench as well. I don't know if you watched the recent bench video, but bench benefits a lot from that momentum where you're really, I was all do strength lifts, but bench as well benefits from starting off lighter, make sure that barbell speeds goes really high, because what you see with the bench is the line between light enough and too heavy is just like, it's very, very sudden. You know, you can add 5 or 10 kilos and suddenly the barbell speed drops off and you won't be productive. Whereas the back squats and the deadlifts, obviously because there's a lot more musculature involved, that line is a bit more of a gradual slope, so you can get away with it a little bit more. But on the bench press, you're much better off being nice and cautious and going block after block after block and adding 5, 10, 15 kilos each time if that is possible.
Dumb Cumster
Oh my
says, thanks for making today's garage workout a bit smarter
Jesus
and a lot
Christ,
funnier.
back again.
Dr. Johnny One Plate D. Humlet says, good day, lads. Do the kettlebell variations of the weightlifting lifts, uni or bilateral, have carryover to the barbell?
No, not to your snatching clean and jerk.
Not in the slightest.
You might get some stability work done or some work capacity stuff done, but in terms of lifts from the floor, no, it's not going to make any difference.
Enrico Marino says, when should I push my deadlift as someone who is chasing Olympic lifting gains? Same as the squat, looking at RTA, looking at RTA after finishing weightlifting one while keeping my Olympic lifting gains. You really, once a year at the most. At the end of an off-season block, you could max your deadlift.
It's never going to hurt to chase the deadlift for weightlifting. Like, it's always going to benefit you in a kind of peripheral manner. So there's obviously specific angles that you're working on, which are very, very important. But, you know, if you come to me from weightlifting and you've got a 310 kilo conventional deadlift, like that just ability to contract all those muscle fibers in a pulling position from the floor is absolutely going to benefit your weightlifting. It's just such an inefficient way of going about that. So yes, it's going to help. Like I'm never, ever going to be in a position where if someone was like, I could add 50 kilos to my deadlift immediately, you're going to be like, no, that would make your
Yeah, you're
weightlifting
never
worse.
going to turn that down.
You know, like where someone said that for bench press, you'd be like, nah, probably not. But for deadlifting, you know, if you've clock off's probably the best example of that is someone who went absolutely batshit crazy on the deadlifts and pulls, and he said that was kind of his big goal. Now, I think, and actually Anton's good as well, but in fairness, Anton's a lot more honest where he just hates squatting. He
Yeah.
really hates squatting. Now I
Yeah.
know clock off had a big squat. I'm sure he did like 325 or something.
Yeah. He also had minced knees.
Yeah, I'd say he just didn't like squatting. I don't think the knees were that bad that he couldn't. You know, if you're clean and jerking
Yeah.
235, you can do a few squats.
Yeah.
But that is a good example. So it's never going to hurt. And I am a fan of amateur weightlifters just being like, you know, I would like,
Strong.
yeah, but if you want to do something, like there's nobody forcing you to do anything in weightlifting if you're an amateur. You know, if there's something, if you think it'd be fun, chasing a bigger deadlift for a while isn't going to hurt your weightlifting. Now, it might slow down your progress temporarily because you won't be doing the lifts as much, but it's definitely not going to negatively impact massively.
In my thoughts says I'm a fat fuck, 6'3",
But I'm
127 kilos.
No, Jack is next. No, on this.
Just go by the YouTube.
No, this is easier for me.
Oh, okay. Right. What's Jack? What's Jack's name?
He said, hey guys, Jack Datson. I may mind recognize. When starting a new program, at a lower body weight, after a decently significant cut, should you adjust your 1 rep maxes to take the weight loss into account or leave them as is? Yes, you should. If it's a very aggressive cut, you know, if we're talking 5, 10 plus kilos, then you could be looking at 10, 15% off your max, maybe a little bit more depending, you know, if it's a massive cut. If it's something under 5 kilos, you might be able to get away with it. Just use a decent representation of your recent max. But yes, it just depends on the magnitude, but you should take into account for sure.
In my thoughts up next?
Yes.
In my thoughts says I'm a fat fuck, 6'3", 127 kilos. Is a 100 kilo snatch still impressive, or should I set my marker a bit higher for a first goal?
That's still impressive. Well,
it's still impressive, 100%, but 100 kilos can't be your first goal. Like if you're starting weightlifting, the first day you walk into the gym, you might snatch 70 kilos or 60 kilos. Your first goal is 10 kilos more than that. So don't get caught up in this thing of I'm going to do this number. Is that impressive enough for me to do as my first goal? 100 kilos is definitely still impressive no matter what body weight you are. But don't get caught up in this thing of, is that an impressive enough goal to be chasing? Like your next goal is 1 kilo heavier or 5 kilos heavier or 10 kilos heavier from where you are right now. So don't get too caught up in that.
Like the way you should approach this is you should think none of your goals are impressive and it's never good enough.
Yeah. Anywho, do you have Enrico next?
I've got Enrico next.
I'm about 84 kilos currently. Snatch is 91. Clean and jerk is 111. Back squat is 175. Front squat is 140. I'm 16 months into weightlifting. I'm enjoying your app. What are realistic numbers I could reach?
You didn't say how old you were.
Like the world is your oyster. If you've done that within the first 16 months,
you know,
you've obviously got something there. 120, 150. Like it really is. Don't even think about what numbers you could reach. Don't put any of those bounds around you.
David said he does have a safety squat
bar. Oh yeah, that's vital for the owied shoulders.
Oculus said, I front squat 100 kilos, power clean 93 kilos. What's wrong with me? My front squat form looks fine according to everyone asked. So, Oculus, this is just general training ability, just how long you've been training, how strong you are. Do you know, a lot of times when you're newer to training or younger or not as experienced, these numbers just kind of look kind of wacky. So that's a good ratio to power clean to front squat, but you're obviously just very weak. So Oculus, the answer to your question here is you actually just need to keep training and these numbers will parse out. So if your goal's a bigger clean, then you'll need a bigger front squat and you'll need good technique. So there's nothing wrong here per se. It's just that you're newer to training and you just need to, big wheels keep on turning.
Collie says, sorry, I'm laughing at a different one further down. For a high school swim team with 6 pool sessions per week and 3 gym sessions, would it be better to just focus on strength and hypertrophy in the gym? Yes.
6 pool is a lot.
Yeah, and they're probably 2-hour sessions each.
Easily.
You just need to do strength and hypertrophy with them. I would actually say you just need to do hypertrophy and then at some point strength, and then at some point back to hypertrophy, and then at some point strength. Essentially, the sessions will be exactly the same. you're just going to go quite high volume, tapering down. Strength should really be tapered and peaked around a month prior to their competition, or 2 or 3 weeks prior to their big competitions, and then probably a week off gym beforehand. But yeah, with the swimmers, they're just so fatigued all the time. They just have so much going on. Like their everything, their caloric expenditure, their ability to recover. You just need to really give them one thing to focus on and do that in the gym. And that should just be a lot of hypertrophy for a phase of 2 to 3 months, then peak that into strength for a phase of 2 to 3 months, give them a month or two of competition work, and then get back to the same thing.
Bog said, would you say in training, you athletes is hypertrophy king, focusing on building quality muscle before focusing on raw strength and power? Yeah, definitely. That's how we'd focus on it. You're just looking at lots of repetitions, work capacity. You're just looking at building familiarity with movement, and higher volume work has a huge part to play in this. So the more repetitions you do with a certain limb, the more styles of movement you do, the better your stabilization is, the more essential overall movement you want to get for that youth athlete. And then the more reps they do in the gym, the more they're going to get from it in most cases. And that's generally what you see as the trend is athletes who play lots of sports are typically better at a single sport later, and they usually get injured less because they have this better work capacity, but they've done lots of different styles of movement and they're getting really good at what they're doing. So there's obviously an argument to be made that heavier lifts will recruit higher motor units and recruit more muscle mass. But at a stage when an athlete is younger, just at more repetitions, using their arms and pressing with something, using their legs and their squatting is going to benefit them a lot. Now, obviously, there needs to be context on this. And, if they're playing games at the weekend, you can't get them doing 4x10 every week on the squat, for example. But when you have the time, it is very, very beneficial. Yes, you want to build that base of the pyramid before they get to older and you can start pushing the strength in. Because like a lot of times you'll see is max strength doesn't mean anything for a 15 or 16-year-old. You could be 60 kilos today, could be their best bench press. And then in 4 weeks' time, you could be doing that for sets of 5. And a lot of time it's just a waste of time going for those heavy singles for them because they could rep them a few weeks after. And you really want to waste some time tapering or anything like that. So yes, that's generally how we would view it. Obviously, there's some nuance and context in general, but by and large, that's the basis. You're always kind of going back to the higher volume training.
He says, also, can the big red man stop harassing the wooden miner? XDP has week 2, day 2 of the RTA today. Nice.
Yeah, lots of people are tagging us in their stories on Instagram for the challenge, so keep it up. Just we'll be doing becoming a horse. A lot of people are asking for the next challenge because some people weren't ready to get squatting or they want to do different ones, but we'll be doing a becoming a horse 1, nice little 12-week challenge around the 3rd week of January. And while it has been cleared with finance, the financial department yet, but there will be a bigger cash prize next time.
Jack Datsun.
No.
Giovanni says it's painful for the mannequin to have a stick stuck in his ass.
Hey, you don't know that. He could
love it.
He hasn't complained about it yet, and he's been here for years.
Jack Datsun. We can't get him off it.
Can't get him away.
Jack says, being greedy with another question. That's what we're here for, Jack.
We're here for these questions.
But any future programs you guys have in the works that you're particularly excited about, maybe Powerlifting 2.0, really enjoying the app so far?
Squat and Sprint.
We
just have to. So sometimes when we make a new program, the development team have to change some things in the app. And then we're like, just get the program up, guys. Look, like Dara likes to shout at them very aggressively.
It's something we can't understand, but it's something called UX. And they have to make UX changes.
Is that a state in the US or something? UX?
User experience?
Yeah, so we have to, Squat and Sprint's coming out soon. So we have to balance between bringing out new programs, but also fixing things in the app that need to be fixed. And
new features.
Or to be honest, a lot of times just refining, improving on features. Like we did an app feedback survey recently, which you should have got an email. So if you could please fucking fill that out,
Jesus Christ, that's not that hard.
So just over 10% of people filled it out. So come on.
Yeah.
Give us an answer.
We can't read your minds.
We know what we need to do. But yeah, so it's a balance between getting new programs up and then fixing features. And most of the time it's kind of fixing the features because eventually we'll get to a stage, I'm hoping, where the features are refined enough that we can kind of build on it from there. Like obviously the chat bot was a big thing we were trying to get on top of recently and improve on that. And then there will be form checks being added to that. So the system basically will be everyone will get 2 videos per month that you can send in. The price will increase a small bit per month, but as you can see, it's Dara and I, and then Callum will be coming on board soon. So if you don't know Callum, he's a very strong weightlifter. He used to be a very high level rower in the UK. He's a coach now for years. He's 135 snatch, 170 clean, absolute horse, about 115 kilos of abs, 250
Bona fide horse.
bona fide horse, has a nipple piercing, 250 kilo back squat. I need to get to post these videos so everyone can see. But they'll be out of the app. Powerlifting, definitely see. There's a lot more strength programs we want to do. There's quite a few programs we want to bring out strength wise. So we want to do a couple of strength blocks where it's like a bench press focused strength block, but you're still doing the other work. So it's not just a standalone or a squat focused block or a deadlift focused block where there's a bit more emphasis posted on those. And then we want to do a lower frequency strength program because a lot of people have asked for that as well. So like a 3-day week strength program, a 3-day week weightlifting program as well. So I'm excited for squat and sprint to come out because I want to see the numbers. But yeah, there's a lot we want to do with the app. But I'm always excited to bring out programs. Andy Glassback came out recently.
Yeah.
JV said, can you please bring Mr. Regular guest?
XDP says those one-legged negative pistol squats are killing my quads. I love it.
Yep. If you want to win this challenge, doing your assistance work is really important. I put that in the email.
This challenge is not going to be won in heavy squat sets. This challenge, heavy squat, singles, doubles, and triples, it's going to be won by people doing the really hard voluminous work and people smashing the accessory work. That's where the win is going to be.
The average squat, I think, was 173, and the standard deviation was like, was it 40 kilos or something? So it's kind of anyone's to win it, you know? I think like
it's going to be a really interesting.
There was a point where the average squat was 143, but then there was quite a few entries which brought that average up a good bit to that 175. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And who actually finishes it, obviously, is going to be a big tell.
Thomas says, lads, we haven't had
Say
any.
your second name.
What's that?
Say your second name, please.
Munair.
Yeah.
Munair. Lads, sorry I put on a foreign accent from an unknown country there, but I assume it wasn't an Irish accent. Lads, we haven't had any training vlogs in the sheds. Need to see the progress on Dara's shed is coming along and a new platform in Owens. Bring back the platform premium content.
I've been very diligently recording
Oh,
a squat vlog. So obviously you've seen our YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching this, if you're on the live stream, you probably watched the YouTube. But we've made some big changes to the YouTube videos, and so they're a bit different. But I've been recording my comeback on the squat since the knee injuries, so they should be out at some point. Now, I have a particular number I want to hit before I make that video. It's going to take Jacob about 4 weeks to edit all those videos together, but that's his problem, not mine. So they'll be back. And then actually, I'm doing a super total this weekend, so I might actually video that and put that up as a video. Should be interesting.
what day is that on?
Sunday. Are you going?
No.
Okay.
Felix says, hi, love the content you're putting up, lads. I'm coming from a powerlifting background and started training for a marathon. Wondering if you've any programs suitable for hybrid training. So this really depends on how much emphasis you want to put on maintaining strength numbers. A lot of the time people go from powerlifting or from strength training into marathon running or any of those longer endurance type pieces like triathlon. They'll basically leave go of all their strength lifts, and it's not a great idea. If you still want to be going quite hard with the strength training and getting a bit more powerful while doing your marathon prep, do Becoming a Horse, but do it 2 or 3 days per week and just stretch it out. So you just stretch out the length of the program. That'll be really good. If you want to put slightly less emphasis on it, basically maintain your strength numbers or maintain some semblance of strength work. What I would say is do the off-season strength and hypertrophy program. Run that twice per week. So your first week of training is week 1, day 1 and day 2. Your second week of training is week 1, day 3 and week 4. Your third week of training will be week 2, day 1 and day 2. So you can kind of continue it on like that. A 4-week block would take you 8 weeks to complete. That will do a massive amount to hold on to all those strength and power numbers you've worked so hard to gain, while also keeping you in good shape, maintaining strong joints, maintaining good range of motion through those joints, while doing all the marathon prep.
Daniel said, is there ever a reason to program, for example, 10 sets of 3 rather than 3 by 10 on something like back squat? I've only ever done 3 by 10, 4 by 10, but just curious if there is a benefit to 10 by 3. So this is funny because I don't know if you've ever listened to a marketer called Rory Sutherland, where, he's talking about things where reducing commute time versus increasing the experience of the commute reduces the perceived time. That's what made me think of that. That's not the question. But yes, there is a definitive issue here. And it's just the amount of work you're doing per set is much greater on those 10s. So the amount of effort it takes to finish that 10. Obviously, if they're at the same weight, it's going to be much harder to do those sets of 10. Now, you might say, okay, if we're doing 10 sets of 3, we should accumulate more weight, or should have higher sets of or higher weight on that 10 by 3. But when we're doing this heavier sets of 10, we're building up work capacity, so we're challenging slightly different systems. You're forcing you to go a little bit further into fatigue to try and maintain form, to improve that output at that kind of muscular fatigue and those higher reps. So generally, 10 sets of 3 isn't something we would particularly use. Now, you could make the argument that it's a good way to practice some heavier weights. And if you're a really proficient squatter, if you're someone who's very strong and experienced and you wanted to get a lot of that higher volume in, but you don't want to be doing huge amounts of sets per rep, for example, or reps per set, I should say. So, if you're somebody squatting like 270 plus or something like that, you want to get a lot of work done in. That's where you might use them, or when I envision someone might use them. We don't ever really use that higher volume. In the deadlift, sometimes we'll use that higher number of sets, but lower volume, which it can be quite useful. Generally, that's quite useful at the start of a block. So obviously the deadlift is really susceptible to form degradation as the volume goes up, as the weight goes up. So this is a good opportunity just to practice lots of deadlifts in a session where you can make sure that quality stays really high when you're doing those sets of 3. That would be somewhere I'd use it. In the squat, not really. In the bench press, not really. Because if you think about it, if you can do 10 sets of 3 with something, you could probably do heavier with 5 sets of 3 and get more meaningful work if you're at the stage where you're at the 3. So how we go with that phasic or approximate phasic structure of training, we're going to move through those phases. If you're at the point where you're doing 3s, then it's the point where you should be going heavier than higher volume. And so 30 reps isn't the equivalent, because a set of 10 is much more all-out effort per set compared to that 10 by 3. I know cluster sets in the literature have become a bit more popular, and if you were to read the literature, you would be like, holy fuck, these things are so useful for power out for athletes. But I don't see that manifesting in reality, or we certainly don't see that.
No.
So
the problem with this, so they're not the same thing, as Owen mentioned, right? They're 3 by 10 and 10 by 3 are not the same thing. They're also never done in the same, like you could never compare those two things as in terms of training effect, because the period of training you'd be doing 10 by 3 is almost the polar opposite of the period of training you'd be doing 3 sets of 10. So that's the thing, when you are moving through those phases of training, those two, you would never be at the point in your training, or you would never be at the point when writing training programs that you would say, will I make this 10 by 3 or will I make this 3 by 10? Those, you would never be at the point where that is your decision that you have to make. They are two completely different things.
Yeah. Enrico said, I'm 31. I played baseball in college. I briefly did weightlifting while doing CrossFit in 2015, and then quit because I had to start my job. Okay, so you're doing the weightlifting.
EA Wavy says, why do I get calves pain while squatting? We can't answer injury questions.
So it's usually an overuse thing, but as Dara says, you can't answer.
The Silver Simon, I haven't seen that username in a while.
We haven't been doing this is first few live streams in a while. So
can you build a massive clean deadlift while still pushing snatch and clean and jerk?
Yes.
It depends how massive, but yeah, you can PR your clean deadlift.
The thing you need to be honest with yourself here is, are you still doing a clean deadlift, or are you just doing a deadlift, But you can.
Are you doing a deadlift with slightly lower hips?
I will say, I personally can't. I tried this, I remember a few months ago when I was trying to do the deadlifts, and the lower back fatigue was absolutely, so when I hurt my knee, I was like, oh, let me do some deadlifting. But the lower back fatigue was absolutely outrageous.
How you feel about deadlifts, how I feel about squats.
I like deadlifting though. No, I'd like how a good deadlift feels. But yeah, see, the problem with deadlifting is So with the squat, you could be kind of sneaky. You could jump in and like, I'll just do my 5x3s the same weight. And if you're really intuitive and you understand programming yourself, like I did with 290 last year.
Yeah.
I was just doing
Yeah,
loads of
yeah.
200s, 220s.
Yeah.
You can't do that with the deadlift.
No,
Not
no.
really. You have to.
No, it's a much longer term.
You have to do the volume at a certain
Yeah.
point with your deadlift, and unfortunately, it's not great for weightlifting. But the answer is yes, you could.
Do you have XTP? You have a different one up here.
I've Kevin.
Let's go with this one.
Oh no, sorry, no, there is XTP.
Which lift responds best to higher volume, higher intensity between snatch and clean and jerk? I personally need more volume with clean and jerk by experience. Thoughts?
So higher volume is a snatch for sure.
Yeah.
You definitely do a lot more reps. Like if you consider one clean and jerk, 1 rep.
Yeah, you're always doing more volume in the snatch. The problem is both of them need a certain level of volume and both of them need a certain level of intensity at a certain point in the program. So it's not like there is a number of intensity and a number of volume that is appropriate, which is the problem. Like, I get where your question is coming from. I get where you're wanting to know this, but there is no number. Like it.
Well, there kind of is in one session. Is that what you mean?
I'm talking about in the general sense, snatch needs more volume, and he won't be able to clean and jerk the same volume. Kevin Hammack.
Why did you say it like that?
Will my collarbone pain tolerance naturally go up with the front squat, assuming my front rack is good? Any tips with pain management?
You shouldn't really have collarbone pain.
Look,
front squat.
You shouldn't. It should be more across your deltoids. But look, some things are going to hurt.
Oh, something's going to hurt
Like,
with weightlifting, no matter what you do.
People always, like, that's certainly one. People on their collarbones, people complaining about the soreness of their thumbs during hook grip. Like, something is going to hurt. And it is, there is no tips for pain management. Like, you kind of just have to get through it.
Luke said, thanks, WAP. Wow. Well, maybe that's his real name. But remember, WAP was the thing. Remember the acronym?
Yes.
So any chance of tier L2 or tier 4 for next Seeker summary? Do you know what? They, a couple of months ago, offered to send them out, and I completely lost contact because I forgot to get back to them, so I forgot to check the size. But I thought of it last week, and I still didn't do it. So I'm going to email them after this. I don't know if I'll do a summary, but I do want to try out the tier because they were obviously very gracious enough to send them to us. But is there any big lifters wearing them? I know Dadish Billy from Azerbaijan was wearing them at Worlds. Can you remember anyone else in particular?
No.
I've heard people say they're nice, so I'm interested in trying them out. Like, I know I'm obviously going in the back of my Rob.
I think Callum has them.
He likes them. He
Yeah.
said they're really good.
Yeah.
Callum, again. Week 1, day 2. Oh, yeah, XTP. But I got hemorrhoids from squatting this much. That's the user experience I'm used to. You think I give a fuck about UX, just make my legs grow sporty. Okay. Oh, here's Vegan Gains. I have Clarence in my house right now. We're both watching you, judging.
Nice.
Oh, actually, Clarence did say he was going collabing with someone. A few people said Sam Sulek. And he's like, you won't expect it. So I was like, maybe it is Sam Sulek.
Vegan Gains is in pretty good nick at the moment.
Yes, definitely. On the gain train. Just 2 natty vegans, just
natty vegans.
Just watching.
Hope you're doing well, lads. Josh says, loving the squat challenge, boys. Scary numbers ahead.
They're not scary.
They're not scary.
They're just really heavy.
You've made the fatal mistake of looking ahead in the programs.
Experience relatively strong. No, stick by 3 to 10. Yeah, deadlift is great, but if it fucks up my clean technique is weights, yeah. Just finished up Becoming Horse 2. Didn't do any real deadlifting in that. So when I moved to the partisan program, do I need to knock off a few percent of PB I just made prior? Nathan, have a look at what you kind of feel like your deadlift capacity is at the moment. If you feel, let's say you did 200 and you're super confident of a 180, 190 now, you could use that. It kind of depends on how things are going. If you want to shoot us a message on the coach,
on the chat, yeah,
we'll get back to you with some specific numbers and we can have a look at, just so you know, we can look at your programs and we know when you're not doing the accessories and you're skipping them. We can look at that. We know what program you're running. All the data's there, guys. We know when you're skipping the accessory work. Not saying you are, Nate.
That's where that 45-second pause between, hey, Dara here, and
have you been doing it?
What was your question?
Yeah, so send us a message, Nathan, just with specific numbers. We'll make sure you get the right one.
John Booker says, hey lads, can I replace the prone back extensions with 45-degree hyper extensions? It lights up my whole posterior. Yeah.
Yep, you can. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
If you're on the app, you could have sent that in the coach feature. Why is it that one can do 150 for 8 RM and 165 for 5, but my 1 RM is 175? This is my first live show.
Because you're mentally weak.
No, that's
Joke.
165 by 5. Like 165 for 5, you probably should be doing 180, 185. But generally, you'll see as well is that the less strong you are, you'll see that'll be condensed probably a little bit more in some cases. And as you get better at strength training, neurological efficiency gets better, your confidence gets better, your psychology gets better, your technique gets better, you get more muscle mass, you'll be able to kind of parse that out a little bit further.
The other thing with that is, right, some people perceive that as an issue, but it's really not an issue. Like you will get better. When no one's talking about like experience it as you get stronger and stronger, that will get so much better. Like it's not a problem that you can do plenty of reps close to your 1 rep max. Like these aren't the last numbers or the heaviest numbers you're ever going to hit.
Okay, so we've about just over the hour mark, an hour and 10. So if you have any questions or any left, let us know. And if not, we'll
Tally ho.
hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back, no, no, no. WAP says his name actually predates that by about 20 years, but some of his friends did sing that.
Yeah, I believe it.
I could see that being hard to resist as someone's friends, that if they did indeed have a name called WAP.
Yeah.
It'd be unfortunate.
It would be unfortunate, yeah.
Like if you were named Karen now and you're in your 30s or 40s, like that's not
Well, my name is Dara, but both of my sisters used to know that it really annoyed me when it was called Doira. So they used to call me Doira.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. XDP said, prescribe mindset for a successful RTA week 4, day 2. Yes, your accessory work in your programs gets you yacked. Okay. Prescribe mindset for week 4, day 2. Week 4, day 2 for the uninitiated is 3 sets of 8 at around 85% of your 1 rep max, or a bit higher than that. Now, going into this, we tell every single person that they're going to hit 3 by 8. Generally speaking, more than half the people will hit those numbers, and they've absolutely minced all of their rep max PBs that they could possibly think of hitting just with that one set. What you need to get your head around here is this session has 3 big things that come from it. The first thing is it's a really hard training session where you get a lot of valuable volume done and a really heavy weight. It's great. The second thing is it stops people being so utterly obsessed with their own 1RM number. People's 1RM number literally sits over them like a cloud. And they think it's this like ceiling that's holding them down. And, oh, I've done 150 kilos. I could never do whatever 160 or 170, you know. You need to forget about it. By the time you get into week 4, day 2, you're more than a month into the training block. You are going to smash through these numbers. The final thing is that in the cases where you don't make 3 sets of 8, you generally end up making a set of 6 or 7, a set of 5, a set of 4, or a set of 3, and you kind of gradually peter down. In that case, most of the people who are hitting that are PBing their 5 rep max, they're PBing their 6 rep max, they're doing the heaviest squats they've ever done at that volume, and they're absolutely smashing their own numbers. So it is an incredible session. Go into it with an open mind, be aggressive with it, get after it, and it will stand to you.
Okay, camera batteries just died, but we're finishing up anyway, so I think you can still hear me. So McDara said, Mayo Man here, get squat up, clean and jerk. Do the weightlifting program. You don't need to run the road to your squat programs with the weightlifting. Just run the weightlifting on the app and you'll be golden. There's no plyos and sprints in them because weightlifters generally don't particularly need them. But you could feasibly add in one day where you do a little bit of sprinting fee and plyos. Probably start with something like hill sprints. And then last one, just because Dara was wrong, what's your reaction to Gabe beating his past best total near a decade after? That's still impressive nonetheless.
Did he beat his best total?
No, but if he's going to get there. I said from the start I think he can do it, and Dara has since admitted that he thinks Gabriel can probably do it.
I definitely didn't think he could, but I think it is possible now.
Looking at those 175 to 100, it really looks possible.
That 175 was insanely good.
The 200s are really impressive.
Yeah.
Like you can see the snatch happening, but sometimes you might think, oh, it's a clean and jerk too heavy, but he looks as good as ever. He only seems to be getting better every... Like a year ago, he was having a hard time at 130, 150, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
Okay, guys, thanks very much.
Thanks for watching. Have a great day.